All right, so we're on. We're going to talk about work today, and it should be a good discussion. Have Mario, David, Michael, and Raul here with me, and I'm excited to talk about all the issues that we that concern work in modern society, the morality of work, and the other issues. And maybe we can start by asking the basic question. Oh, and by the way, we read In Praise of Idleness by Bertrand Russell, which is an essay, seminal essay about the morality of work, arguably. And we're going to be referring to that essay during the discussion. So let's start with what is work, because that's the quintessential philosophical question, right? What is something? So what is work? And actually, that's how Bertrand Russell starts the essay. And do you guys mind if I read it real quick so we have a baseline?
Fine.
Okay, so it's actually short. He gives a pretty straightforward definition. So he says, what is work? Work is of two kinds. First, altering the position of matter at or near the Earth's surface relatively to other such matter. Second, telling other people to do so. The first kind is unpleasant and ill-paid. The second is pleasant and highly paid. The second kind is capable of indefinite extension. There are not only those who give orders, but those who give advice as to what orders should be given. So yeah, I mean, that's the main thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing. So basically, there are two kinds of work. One is basically transforming something that exists on Earth, and the second kind is telling people to do that and how they should do that. What do you guys think about that definition?
What if the thing you're telling is a machine?
Can you repeat that?
What if the thing that you're telling is not a person but a machine?
Yeah, that's a new kind of work. It hasn't been.
I guess this was before machines. This was
Yeah.
written in the early 20th century or late
Right.
19th century. I think it was the early 20th century. Or
But that would be the second kind.
yes,
Right.
that would be the second kind, I guess, right? Because
Yeah.
the machine in that case is the worker. It's just not a person. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
But I think this is all kind of definitional, right? So Bertrand Russell, he's saying by the definition that work is inherently unpleasant, right? He says the first kind is unpleasant, the second kind is pleasant and profitable, right?
Yes, he's saying, well, the first kind, when you actually have to transform things to create something, then that's usually unpleasant. When you just have to tell people what to do or to do that, that's usually pleasant.
But today a lot of work is services. So like a teacher, I guess you're not building something in a factory, so it's more qualitative than actually a hard product. I wonder if his definition sort of captures that.
I think you make a good point. I think you make a good. I think maybe his definition is a little bit too narrow. He's trying to give us a very narrow definition or a very straightforward definition, and maybe he misses the mark. I think the intention is good. I mean,
Yeah,
he means that, but the words don't quite describe all of that, right?
I know a lot of blue collar people who take great pride and joy in their work. So that saying that unequivocally that is manipulating physical objects is unpleasant is, I don't think that holds true.
Right. No, it's a generalization, of course.
It's a big generalization.
Yeah.
It varies from person to person.
Yeah.
All right. So is that part of the premise?
But I think for the most part, most people who in the first category, if you ask them, what they feel about their jobs, I think, and I could be totally wrong, I have no direct personal experience, I think their attitude would be, well, it's a job, and they might enjoy it, but maybe if you ask them, would you rather be doing something else? If not for the income, probably, you know, if you're on the factory assembly line the whole day for a whole week, I think it's reasonable to expect them to say, no, it's not the thing I'd like to do most in the world, but, you know, so in terms of as a simplification to just make it easier to analyze things, I think it's a reasonable assumption as long as we keep in mind that there will be significant exceptions.
Yeah, I feel
Right.
that I need to contextualize. I think you're right, Roel, and I feel that maybe I need to contextualize it a little bit and also clarify it a little bit. So the context is that he's writing this in the first half of the 20th century, really in an industrial age, right?
Right.
Where most of the work was really more industrial in nature than obviously in our time. So I think that kind of explains why he goes for that, perhaps a little bit oversimplified. I think you guys have found the weakness in that narrow definition. So yeah, he oversimplifies a little bit. Now to your question, to clarify a little bit, David, he does that's not really part of the premise. That's just like how he opens the essay, just kind of like, what is work, right? And basically there are two kinds, and I think that still holds true, because his general idea is that there are two kinds of work: the people that actually do the work, and I think now we should probably be a little bit better than Russell in the sense of, well, perhaps work, not all work is just modifying substances, right? Perhaps there are other types of work, like you guys have mentioned, services are a big thing. We live in the technological age, so obviously that's not all work. But the second kind still holds truth, right? You have the people that actually work, and then you have the supervisors, the managers, that actually tell people, you have to work and you have to work in this way. So I think that still kind of holds true. And the first kind usually is better than the second, in the sense, the second kind, when you just have to tell people to work and how they should work, that's usually better than the first kind, because it's more pleasant, and certainly you get paid more, which is something that he adds later on. So yeah, the people that tell people to work are usually much better paid than the people that actually do the manual or do the primary work. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Although sometimes the people that tell people to work have a boss that tells them to work their people harder. So it's you have to go way up to the top of the chain. And then sometimes the CEO has shareholders that are telling the CEO to work the people harder. So it's not that obvious, I would say, but yeah.
It's like a pyramid. You have the person that works, the person that tells him to work, and then the person that is above telling the person that tells him to work to tell him to work, right? And so on and so forth, going up until the very top.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think it's that obvious. Like being a CEO could be a lot more stressful. Even if you work 40 hours, could be more stressful than the people at the bottom, because the shareholders are telling you to be more profitable, run your business better.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think it's a little bit trickier.
I haven't done a study, so I don't know how far it goes, but sometimes the stress of a supervisor or a manager comes more from the people you supervise and manage than it does the people who are telling you what to do or what goals you have to reach, because many people they feel responsible for the livelihood of the people who are working with them.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's stressful.
It is. And I know I've read a summary of a study or of some kind of, it's saying that in general, middle management in ways is the most stressful thing, because if they consider the main source of stress as the loss of control or the feeling of loss of control over your own fate, middle management is is caught right in the middle. They get it from upstairs and they get it from below. And that's why, middle management is really known to be more stressful than anything else. I mean, a lot of people who are at the bottom of the ladder are actually face, not all, but some of them face little stress compared to the rest of the organization, because they just have to do what they're told to do. And as long as they don't mess up what they're doing, they're not under any stress at all for the performance. I would add,
there's continuous pressure to produce more than before. So like, and not always. I mean,
right.
But it's hard to make generalizations here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
whatever metric the company's measuring, they'll probably keep increasing it until it's not that easy anymore, right?
Sure. But I would add, when you say that CEOs might face more stress than the rest of the organization, the only thing I would qualify is most CEOs have the resources to just walk away from the stress, if they wanted to, and that's not true for most people.
Yeah, if they had to, they could just call it quits and walk away. So it's kind of like a feeling. It's kind of like they're doing it somewhat for their reputation. They don't want to tarnish their reputation or look bad, so they they keep trying to keep up the organization. But yeah, they could walk away if they wanted. There's a benefit.
Yeah.
So I think those are some good points, and maybe Bertrand Russell didn't quite hit the mark when he was just trying to define what work is. Would you guys care to venture into that territory and try to define work? Is that a valuable thing for us to do, to try to figure out what work is before we advance further?
I suppose work is just whatever activity that you get into with the aim of generating an income for yourself.
Yeah, I think work is anything that makes money. I like that definition best.
Yeah.
If you do something that makes money, whether you enjoy it or don't enjoy it, I would call that work.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't make any money when I mop my kitchen floor.
Right.
And when I'm mopping the floor, if you ask me if I like this work, I'm going to tell you no. But I do like having it done.
Yeah. Right.
I wonder if a broader definition or a more encompassing definition would be something that requires exerting effort.
Well, what about playing basketball? Does that work?
Well, if you're a professional basketball player, it is.
Or what if you're just what if you don't make money but you just play it for fun? Does that work?
No.
But that takes a lot of effort.
That's physical exertion. That's not work.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Mario is actually going to play basketball tonight, and something happened that he couldn't attend his game tonight, so that's why he's with us. Mario, would you consider going out and playing basketball with your friends' work?
Not necessarily. I mean, the way I think about work is you're trading something in return of something else, and I can trade my time, I can trade my experience, I can provide, a service, whatever it is in manufacturing, I'm trading my skill, whatever, to build something. And in return of, it could be money, it could be something beneficial for me. Like I would call it work even if I'm not getting paid for it. It could be I'm not getting paid money for it, but I'm getting some other value for it. Like some people work for, just to sleep in a room, right? Or whatever. So this is still considered work. Now, playing basketball for fun, that's not work. I don't consider it work. But if I am told, if I have like instructions of what to do and how to do, like, and if you're playing in the NBA, for example, you don't just do it at your leisure, you are told, okay, now there's this game, you gotta play it. You're getting paid for that, so this is work.
How about this definition?
So it seems that your definition, Michael, before you say anything, it seems that it's being challenged, that it doesn't necessarily needs to be for money.
Yeah, no, I agree. How about either something unpleasant that you exert at, but it benefits your livelihood? So like David said, mopping the floor, or something that makes money. So it's like,
I would go, and I haven't thought this. This is not a mature thought. It just occurred to me, but I would go one step further and suggest that we all do work for which we are not paid. And maybe what we're really talking about is effort that you do in exchange for money, whether it's physical effort or mental effort or whatever. Is that what we're talking about?
That's what I'm referring to when I said any activity that you undertake to generate an income. And income can be money, it could be room and board, could be, a piece of property,
So
But,
if you volunteer at a place and you don't get paid or anything, it's just volunteering work.
Yeah,
But you have to go at a certain time and leave at a certain time. You're not getting anything in return other than maybe self-satisfaction.
right.
Would that, by your definition, not be considered work?
No, that I wouldn't call that work.
what about
That's-
mopping the floor? Does mopping the floor count as work?
No, I wouldn't include that in the type of work that we're kind of interested in talking about.
I don't do that in exchange for money. I do that
No,
in exchange for a clean floor.
right.
Yeah,
You
so I
do-
kind of like limiting it. I kind of like, just for the sake of discussion, Raul's definition. I agree that like David, like mopping the floor, I agree that like often we will call that work, but I think just for the sake of discussion, it might help just to focus ourselves on income and things that generate income, just for clarity.
So that generates income, which might be money or might be something else, correct?
Right.
Yeah, if you have to do it to get room and board or to get some other benefit to your livelihood, I think that counts.
Right. Do you guys agree with that definition?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so let's advance. I think we're gonna have to go back to that definition, but I want to ask you guys, is work morally good and not working, which is leisure, morally bad? So, because this is, I think, the most interesting part about talking about work today is perhaps the morality of work, because it seems that people attribute quite a bit of a moral load to work and its opposite, leisure. So it seems that a lot of people think that work is morally good and leisure is morally bad. This is the assumption of people. Now, Bertrand Russell is very, very, very critical of this assumption. But what do you guys think about it?
Well,
Yeah, I'm also critical of it. I agree with Bertrand Russell.
I mean, I think it's a Calvinists who either originated or propagated the idea that you honor God by working. And I think it's also that if you work hard and you get rewarded by it, that is a sign that you are what is a term, that you are endowed with the grace of God or something. I'm not a theologian, so I won't try to speak with any authority on it. But
yeah, but I think you're
yeah.
right. I think you're right that there's it's not necessarily just that, but there
Right.
is a religious element to it, because some religions, in particular, some of the religions that have become prevalent in some parts of Northern Europe and the United
Right.
States, I think
Right.
And I would have to do a little bit more research, but obviously the Puritans, they're known for having some very strong ideas about work. And also, like you're saying, the Calvinists, it's essentially more of a Protestant.
Well,
belief.
yeah, it's a Protestant work ethic. That's what's his name called
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Forgot him. Yeah.
So I don't think this is a valid question, to be honest, because when we talk about morally good or morally bad, we're talking about people's well-being, about suffering, about all of that. And work does not touch on whether it's good or bad. It's just saying you're providing some service or something in return of income. I could be working and providing harm to people, something that eventually harms people, or my work could be doing good. So just by saying work, I don't think we can know whether it's morally good or bad.
Right.
So maybe not working is better than working and doing something that harms people.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very hard to make broad generalizations here. I guess what Bruno's, I guess most people, when they think of the statement, they're just referring to good, honest work, like making
Right.
chairs or making tables, or I don't know, being a carpenter or a farmer, harmless stuff that benefits people. But yeah, no, there's plenty of workers that can do lots of harm. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct. I mean, I think Michael is absolutely correct. I mean, I think that the exception is something like being in the mafia, right? Yes, you're making money, but usually most people wouldn't consider you a model citizen, right? So the illicit work, I think, falls into an exceptional category. But we still get the broad category of work, or like what did you say, Michael? Like valid.
Maybe,
Honest.
maybe I would understand.
Yes, like
what-
an honest day's work, right? Is what people say, like it's honest work. There's this big idea of honest, valuable, moral work. So I'm not really so sure I agree. I know what you're saying, Mario, but I'm not so sure I agree with you. I do think
Yeah.
that a lot of people do put quite a bit of a moral load on work.
It still looks for me like comparing apples with oranges. I don't think work and morals kind of fall into the same category, but maybe I'm just thinking of it in a different perspective than what you guys are. But I think what we can call morally good or bad is the results of our work.
Right.
Just by saying work is like, okay, you're providing something, but we don't know what that thing is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could be a waiter, I could be a whatever, right? That by itself doesn't tell me if my work is morally good or not, without discussing the content of or the results of my work. So if I'm adding value to society, if I'm helping others, I could be doing honest day's work, whatever you called it, but still I'm not really adding value to society. I'm just doing it for income. That's not morally good necessarily.
I think Bertrand Russell is directly criticizing the Protestant work ethic mentality, that because outside it's a presumption. The consequences of somebody's work or what somebody does during his leisure is just an idea that to be working is morally higher than to be spending your time in leisure, and yeah, I think that's what
Yeah.
I would agree with Mario, that you can't just say work period is morally superior to leisure period.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you on it. I was referring to what other people think, which I think is erroneous. But a lot of other people, not people necessarily on this call, but a lot of other people just have the mindset, oh, it's good to work hard.
Right. Yeah.
And another idea that I just thought of about work as well, which is you can in a simplified version, in theory, you can think of work as a zero-sum game, right? You're providing something, but you're taking something back in return. That thing that you're taking in return, if you didn't take it, it could be used to help people or to do whatever, right? So you're providing something, but you're taking something as well. So if you think about it from that perspective, you're not adding to society. It's just a zero-sum game at the end.
Well, I concur. I agree with you. Well, I understand what you're saying, Mario, but I concur with Michael. You know, what I'm trying to say is not so much to give my opinion at first. I'm just putting it out there that a lot of people attribute a morality to work, and they tend to say that work is good and leisure is bad. Now, if that's true or not, I mean, that's something that we can discuss and we should discuss. That's why I posed the question. But I don't think it's correct to say that people don't give morality to work, or they don't attribute a moral load to work, because I've just encountered that just recently, because I've been posting some of our videos on YouTube and on Facebook, and I've gotten into some very heated discussions about capitalism and socialism and what's the other one? Income inequality and wealth redistribution and universal basic income. I've been called a communist by a lot of people, even though I mean, I'm probably like center, but people, especially the modern right, seem to attribute certainly a very strong moral value to work and money, but even to work itself. And this is not it doesn't come just from today. I mean, lots of ideologies have attributed this moral load to work, like you know, like what I was saying and Raul was saying. This is tied with the Protestant culture, you know, I've been told this by my family, actually. At one time I wasn't working, and they're not even Protestant, they're Catholic, but they kept telling me that it was immoral not to work, regardless of money. I was even like making money through investments and stuff at the time. So it wasn't even just a matter of the money, actually. It was more a matter in a lot of churches. People believe that if you're not working, you know, you're not morally sound. You need to work. So I guess it's not even just Protestants. I think it's a Christian thing, but Protestants have it more.
Yeah, no, I'm totally fine with that. I'm just saying that I don't kind of see it in that angle, but yeah, I'm sure, and I've heard it before that they discuss it that way. But so my answer to that is that no, I don't think working is morally good and not working and leisure is morally bad. No.
Okay. Is there anyone that thinks that work is morally good or morally bad? I'm sorry, I think the internet connection is really bad.
We get your audio.
Maybe we should attribute a moral value to internet connections.
Attribute a moral value to internet. We got that.
Yeah, I think it's evil when internet connections are not working properly.
You know what would help me is and maybe I'm just off in some weird tangent here, but I'm a little confused by this conversation, and I because while there is moral work and immoral work, are we saying that that it is immoral for people to pay other people to do the work that they don't want to do? We're not saying that, are we?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. I was just making sure.
To me, I think we should work the amount that is best for our well-being and society. So I think that's I don't think work is good or bad. I think it's like you want to reach the ideal level. You don't want to work less than that.
I guess what would help me is it's not clear to me at what point in everybody's mind does work become immoral.
I'm not really so sure anyone here is saying that it's immoral. I think a lot of people in
No,
general,
I'm not saying that you're saying that it's immoral, but you agree that there's some work that's immoral to do. We talked about the mafia killing
Right,
other people and
Yes.
all of that.
right.
Yes.
And at what point does it become immoral?
So I think I have an answer to that. It becomes immoral when we're forced to work more than we really need to survive, or when I don't know if it's political forces or economic forces. So like a couple hundred years ago, if you were let's say a serf or whatever, and you had to do lots more work than you actually needed to survive, but you had to do it to obey your master, that would be immoral.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with what you're saying, but I'm not talking about 200 years ago.
200 years
I'm
ago.
talking about today.
Yeah. So today, I
I mean,
guess
that's the low hanging fruit. You know,
Well, I mean, if something hurts society, even though you're making money, I don't think everybody agrees with this, because if not, we wouldn't have those problems. But like, for example, a drug dealer is certainly working according to our definition, right? He's generating income.
Sure.
Some of them are generating a lot of income, depending on where they are in the pyramid. But I mean, I don't think anybody here would agree that that's moral work, right? I mean,
Right.
it's clearly hurting society, so that's immoral in that case. If you do work but you're hurting society, I think reasonable people would say it's an immoral type of work.
Right. I would say that work outside of the consequences of your work, just working per se, is neither moral or immoral. You know, I would always judge work in terms of the consequences. I would never say, "Oh, you're not working," or then you know, what's the matter? What's you know, you're morally lacking. Now, if the thing is you're not working while your family is starving, then that's a different, you know, again, it's a consequence of not working that's being weighed, not just work per se, the thing itself. So I don't think there's ever a way to make a moral valuation of the act of engaging in an activity with
Well,
the aim of generating an income.
I think that's a very important distinction, but I'm still going to insist one more time. Last time, I'm going to insist on the fact that there are people that in fact attribute. It's not like you're saying, Raul. I think that's a very good distinction.
Right.
You're talking about the morality or immorality of the consequences of
Right.
working or not.
Right.
Right. So, which is a completely different thing. In fact, it's a different category.
Right.
Some people, and Bertrand Russell touches on this, right? But the fact is that they attribute the value not to the consequences of work necessarily, but just the fact that if someone's working hard or not, if someone's hard at work or not, or if someone's just being idle, right? And according to religious people, not all religious people, mind you, but some religious thought, I would say. If you're working hard, you're doing a valuable thing, and I shouldn't say valuable, but I should say, you're doing a moral thing, right? You're being a good person. Whereas if you're idle, and this is like where we come into the territory in praise of idleness, which is the title of the essay by Bertrand Russell. If you're being idle, you're bad. You're a bad boy, right? Or a bad girl.
Right.
Because you're straying from the path of the hard worker. Of course, Bertrand Russell says, well, this whole thing was created by people in the first place that were at the top. They benefited from the work of the people that were on the bottom, and they were themselves idle, and they perpetuated all of this, which is absolutely true. If you look at you just need to look at history, right? Who was perpetuating this in Christianity? It was the clerical class, and the only reason why they were able to spend their time praying and studying was because people were working to provide their food for them, so they didn't have to work.
All right. So,
Right.
so
Same
let me
thing with
just get,
same thing with the nobles, which was the other class.
Right.
let me just get a little clarity here. Now, I have a lot of people in my contact list on my phone, and I don't have to do a lot of work to call somebody. I just have to find their name, and I know their name, find their name on a list of contacts and mash a magic mirror, and I can call them. So I'm clearly doing less work than I had to do in the past, where I had to look them up in the phone book or remember their number. So if I'm doing less work than I used to do, am I doing something less moral than I used to do? That's where I'm not clear.
That's the whole point. You're not.
Bruno is just talking about what people, and this I would say is a long, kind of a longer time ago. So I'm not sure like if it's as relevant today, but he's just saying in the past that was people's, and not anyone on this call's view, but in the past that was like the Protestant, there was a Protestant work ethic in the past. Like during the Industrial Revolution, like some people might have, I don't think people were against technology, but they just believe that, you know, more work is better. So yeah, I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, work is inherently good or bad, but I think it's about reaching the right level of work.
I can see your point, Bruno, about what you're saying, but in a specific kind of perspective. You know, it's like if you compare in general working versus not working, what that means in general and what that means in general, then yes, you can, with some assumptions, you can say, you know, with some assumptions about the type of work you're doing, or if you're not working, that you don't have any other problem that's preventing you from work, whatever, right? Everything is normal, then yes, you can say this is morally good because the assumption is that your work is providing something to the society. You know, you're either doing a service, you're helping people, whatever. And especially in the old days too, now we have a lot of type of work that they're kind of in the gray area, whether they're helpful or harmful, you know, in the short term, long term, whatever, right? Before you do work, you're helping the crops grow, you're helping whatever, you give service to somebody. And versus now working, it means your output is zero, and plus is always better than zero. So yeah, it's morally good, and this other one is morally bad. So in that specific context, yes, I could see your point and could say, you know, working is morally good, and otherwise it's not.
Let me just change gears a little bit, and let's go to the part of non-working, right? Because it's if you're working, that historically has been considered good. And like I said before, and like Russell was saying in the essay, if you're not working, which is idleness, or we can call it just leisure for, and that's also what Russell calls it throughout most of the essay, even though he doesn't use it in the title. So leisure as not working, is that morally bad? And just to introduce again Russell's point of view, he's saying leisure is not bad. And this, just like the fact that work is good, is a misconception in the ways that I mentioned before, leisure is also not bad. You know, leisure can be good. Well, what do you guys think?
I don't really worship anything Russell says. I think that was like a while back that he wrote it. I don't think there's like I think nowadays people just want enough money to live. Like, I don't think, maybe there's still a little bit of traces of that old Protestant work ethic, but I think nowadays people just want money in the bank. I don't know if that's how big of a thing that still is, but yeah.
I think it's a pretty big thing.
You
If you
know?
talk, if you talk to people, it's a big thing. Like
Yeah.
I just have I have a friend of mine who's rich, and his family is very rich. You know, this is in Lisbon. He's the richest guy I know in Lisbon. His family is very rich. They own a lot of property, so he probably would not need to work to live. You know, because his family would just give him a lot of money. He does work, and he's always worked, and he actually found a job that compensates him quite a bit. And he's always worked for the same, you know, it's an international company, and he ended up getting paid quite a bit of money. And because of European employment laws, it's not like in the US, you know, if you work for a company a long time and they fire you, they have to pay you like a shitload of money to fire you. So they think very hard about firing you first. But in this case, you know, I think it was because of the pandemic, they were kind of like desperate. They decided to fire some people just to kind of streamline things. He got paid a shitload of money to get fired, like a mini lottery, basically. So money was clearly not a problem, and he was unhappy after like 3 weeks or a month. He was, I could sense, and I talked to him, and in fact, I told him, you should not be unhappy. This is very illogical. You know, you should be like celebrating with champagne right now, like, because you would have to work like for 3 years or 4 years in order to get that amount of money if you're lucky. 5 years, 6 years. So like he got a very good package. And the thing that bothered him was the stigma, because, you know, he worked for a long time in the sort of like the corporate world. So like the people that he knew in that world, and in like a middle class, sort of like high middle class, you know, you go to your kid's school and stuff, and people ask you, oh, you're unemployed. Oh, you know, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Oh, what do you do during the day? You know, like, and he told me, you know, I'm always getting the impression that people are looking down on me, you know, and that really bothers me. Eventually he got over it because he got a lot of money, but for a while, you know, that depressed him, and he felt that people were looking down on him. Now, maybe that was just in his mind. Maybe it was really people looking down on him because he wasn't working and he was spending his day, you know, going to museums or something, which is what he was doing while he was unemployed. He has since found another job, but the point is, it doesn't matter. Either way, there is this perception, you know, that working is perhaps important for you to be a good person, a good member of society, regardless of money. So I think we're underestimating this idea a little bit.
No, yeah, I think the whole of U.S. society is permeated by the Protestant work ethic, and I'm not going to say that's automatically a bad thing. You know, there's always two views to it, and there's certainly the economic success that the United States and Western Europe has experienced, has enjoyed, is I would say you can attribute in a big way to the Protestant work ethic. And also that manual labor is not something to look down on. People who have not been outside the United States or who grew up in the United States, it's a foreign notion to them that manual labor is looked down on. But in a lot of societies, that is something that is prevalent, and so it's a totally different dynamic going on, and probably a different discussion from the one what we have right now. But that's certainly something I think that the Protestant work ethic has gotten rid of, this looking down on people who work with their hands, who break a sweat in their work. You know, I grew up in a society, and most societies, a lot of societies outside of Western Europe and the United States, I wouldn't even include all of Western Europe, is looks down very much on manual labor. And you're and we know of all the societies that are, very hierarchical caste system and things like that. And it's basically, the lower you are, the more strenuous the type of labor that you tend to engage in, and people look down on you basically because you're now out there in the sun breaking your back rather than in an office or whatever. So yeah, I would not necessarily condemn the Protestant work ethic, but of course, things can always be taken to an extreme. And
Yeah, one thing I find interesting, so yeah, David asked, what is immoral or bad work? I think that's a really good question. It's like when people say we work too much, what do they mean? Could you always just stop working or whatever? So like, I think that's really the heart of the question. And I think the labor market, the labor market is not as competitive of a market as the market for goods and services. Because you can't just switch a job willy-nilly whenever you want. Whereas you can switch a product whenever you want. So if you're buying a certain brand, I don't know, if you eat at a certain restaurant and then all of a sudden you don't like it, you can switch to a different restaurant. And if you don't like that, you can switch back. So it's the market for goods and services is really competitive, and that really forces the products to be as good as possible. But the labor market is not quite that way. You can't just keep switching jobs back and forth. So once you have a job, your employer kind of has more of a say. If they can, kind of ask you to keep producing more and more output, and the work doesn't have to be pleasant work. They can. It's also the quality of the work too. They can make the work more and more strenuous and unpleasant, and you don't have as much flexibility to just flip jobs back and forth. Because, that's kind of my view. But yeah, I'm kind of sad that we just reached 8 p.m. and we're gonna have to close up soon. But yeah, that was kind of my view.
Let's go on for a little, because we are going kind of slowly. We're having a really good discussion, but we've progressed very slowly. So I think my guests are not going to be happy, or my wife. But let's try to do half an hour. Let's see if someone shouts at me, and we'll do half an hour, or at most.
All right. So what do you guys think about what I just said? So yeah, jobs are better than they used to be in the past. There's no doubt about that. But could they be even better if somehow the labor market were more competitive and the employees had more, I guess, sway or more, I guess, power in like the decisions over what they could do for work? Could the labor market be improved from where it currently is, even though it's still much better than it used to be? Yeah.
No, we're as good as we can possibly be, and there's no room for improvement.
Yeah. Is there
no,
Yeah.
one thing I think that the labor market is and policy is not directly addressing is that the minimum training needed to get into a job that offers a living wage, shall we say, or a livable income, has just been increasing and increasing. I mean, used to be, you can read and write, that's fine. Then it's a 6th grade education, and then it's a high school education. And now, if you only have a high school diploma, your prospects, your lifetime prospects, are severely curtailed. And I don't know if the solution is that have to change the educational system so that 12 years of instruction is still enough, or maybe it's just a case that now it should be 14 or 16 years of instruction. Is that just a consequence of the complexity of society, of technology, or is it something that we just need to educate people more smartly so that the 12 years of education will be enough to offer people the skills to get jobs that offer a comfortable level of living. And so now I don't know. We'll find out what's needed to be done, but certainly we do know that right now all the statistics say that if you don't have a college degree, you're in big trouble. And I don't know how that relates to the topic of the morality of
work.
No, I mean
Yeah.
that's a good question. I think that partially that kind of like ties with what actually the main theme. So I'm just gonna we can get past Bertrand Russell after this. I'm just gonna say, because I haven't really talked about the main thesis of his essay. His main thesis is in essence that we work way more than we actually need to. That and he gives a very smart argument to illustrate the fact. So if you haven't read this essay and you're watching this video in praise of idleness, this is a very good essay by Bertrand Russell. But his argument is basically illustrates the fact that if we reach a level of production and society is doing okay, you know, and he illustrates how this has been accomplished in the past, as productivity rises, we actually could, if we wanted to maintain the same level of standards of living, we
Right.
could, if we had a logical system,
Yeah.
we could slowly but surely start to reduce our working hours as a society, and that we would still maintain the same level of living, which
Right.
is basically just mathematics, right? You just have to find a system that made sense, that allowed us all as a society to, in fact, work less, produce the same, right?
Right.
Well, actually, work less, but produce more because the productivity rises,
Right.
but maintain the same standards of living. I mean, this is pretty basic stuff, right?
You know,
Well, we don't have a system that allows for that. What we have is a system where, like what he says, you know, if you have a certain level of productivity and you have workers working 8 hours a day, producing a certain thing, and then the level of productivity rises, instead of shortening those hours to four hours and producing the same, what you're going to do is you're going to still make them work the 8 hours, produce twice as much, and you're going to have an unemployed person that is miserable and doesn't have enough money to live. You know, instead of doing the logical thing, you would have two people that work 4 hours and maintain the same level of living. And he says, this is madness. If we think about it this in these terms, this is madness. This happens because we have the system that we do have. But this is a very inefficient system. And Bertrand Russell is basically a genius, and he's a mathematician. So I can believe that, you know, in his mind of a mathematician, this is absolutely crazy. You know, why would we do this to ourselves as a society? Which makes sense.
Does he touch on what we should do to change the system?
Yeah, I guess the solution is just work fewer hours, but maintain the same standard of living. But I mean, and I guess we have part-time jobs nowadays, so people always have the option to work a part-time job.
It's not the same though, because if you have a part-time job, you don't make enough money to
You don't get benefits. Yeah, you know, the thing that struck me when I was reading, I just read an hour ago, is that he's pointing out the very same thing that Marxists are complaining about. I mean, Marxists basically saying, look how productive our society is. How come there are still people in poverty?
Don't even mention Marx, because the right-wing people are going to listen to this video. They're going to go crazy in their mind. You know, now we're all communists. After that remark, now we're all communists. I'm sorry, guys, we're all communists now.
No, yeah, but it's, you know, and Bertrand Russell is not a Marxist. One thing he is not a Marxist.
He was like one of the most vocal critics of Marxism in the world.
Right. So. Yeah. You know,
but you don't underestimate YouTube.
Yeah, that's true.
Fortunately, you bear the brunt of all of that.
but it's it's one thing is that the competition forces you to just really maximize your efficiency. That's one thing. I mean, even if you can survive at this level, but if this company does that, then you'll have to match it. Otherwise, that's the end of you, right? Or even if your country is satisfied at this level, with people just working 5 hours a day and enough productivity to satisfy everyone's needs, and then there's this other country who's willing to make people work 8 hours, 10 hours a day, and then they become a economic threat to your economy, to your well-being. Then that's maybe one way to look at it. Why things are the way they are. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying that's right. But these are things that maybe force the types of setups that Bertrand Russell is looking at it and saying this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I want to go back to, why is part-time not good enough? If we're producing so much more than we used to, why can't we live on part-time? Because prices have also gone up. I guess it's an interesting mathematical question, right? If we're producing, like, I don't know, at least 5 times as much as we did like 100 years ago, right? Then why wouldn't working a part-time job be good enough? And I think the answer is really, I think it is good enough. It would mean the healthcare we get, I mean, we might not get health insurance, but we'd still be healthier. Like I think we would be good enough if we just worked a part-time job. It just wouldn't be as good as other people. And I feel like maybe we're just kind of trying to keep up with the Joneses. So it's like,
Well,
we live in a very modest apartment. We live on beans and rice,
I would qualify that with wait until you have 2 kids to send to college.
Maybe you can't afford to send, or maybe
Only takes one.
Yeah.
but yeah, like, I mean, if you work part-time, like, could you live on just eating beans and rice?
Right.
Maybe you don't even like not the greatest apartment, but yeah, like, maybe you could do it. It's just we want to keep up with the rest of the pack.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there is truth to that. Or I have read before. I remember reading one reason you shouldn't be too concerned about automation is the standard of living kind of keeps getting higher and higher, which creates more jobs. And yeah, if you really had to survive off not very much money, you could survive at least, just not with the same quality of life.
Mhm.
Well, I think we have to qualify. First of all, I mean, this really depends on what part of the world you live in, and even what city you live in. Assuming that, for example, you're in the United States, but it really depends on where you are. I would say that from my experience, most places in the world, and I lived I've been, obviously you guys know, I've lived in a bunch of different places. Most places in the world, I believe you cannot live on a part-time wage for the most part. I mean, it's, even if you really wanted to, yes, maybe if you say, well, if you really live in a hut, and you eat beans and rice, yes, you could, of course, yes, maybe. But that's not really a life that you can lead in the 21st century, or that you want to lead in the 21st century, right? So yes, of course you can make that argument. You can make the argument that, yeah, you can go live in the slums and work 10 hours a week if you really want to. Yeah, I guess it's possible. You, Michael Greenberg, do you want to go live in the slums?
But I guess that's my whole point. We work more than we need to, because
Well, but that's not what
that was the
more than we
Joneses,
need to,
right?
really, because like you are not willing to go live in the slums.
I'm not, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't be. I guess I'm not willing to because I want to keep up with the Joneses. I want to, you know,
let alone, let the Jonases alone. I'm just saying, like, basic quality of living, like going to, go living in the slums, and living in a super, like, crime ridden area, and eating the very minimum that you need for your subsistence is probably not a life that you would
No.
even find acceptable, if
really
you're
not
being
sure about
honest.
that. Like if everyone else, let's say all my peers and everyone I knew just lived off beans and rice, really modest lifestyle, like really bare bones apartment. Let's say everyone around me did that. Maybe I would do it.
Yeah,
But I'm too embarrassed to do it.
yeah.
I would be
No,
very embarrassed.
you can't forget about the Joneses, because that's a fact of life, fact of human society. I mean, studies of happiness have already demonstrated that it's really how you are relative to people around you that determines how happy you are. And it's really more on relative level. Happiness is determined by your relative position rather than your absolute standard that you're living in. And so we cannot it's human nature. Our happiness, our contentment is very much influenced.
I see Bruno's face. I like that fact. I don't like that that's true, but yeah.
But that's the way it is. I wish it weren't, right?
Let me just read,
simpler.
I'm just going to read you guys, because I realized it's actually shorter than I thought. So I'm just going to read you Bertrand Russell's argument. He gives two arguments. Actually, I think both of them are sufficient in themselves to illustrate this. But I think the second one is a little bit more famous. So I'm just going to read it. It's actually not that long. Okay, so he's trying to take,
I'm listening. I may be off the screen, but I'm listening.
Okay, so he's giving the second example of why, in fact, a system that makes people work as much when they produce, when productivity rises a lot, why that system makes absolutely no sense. So here goes. Suppose that at a given moment, a certain number of people are engaged in the manufacture of pins. They make as many pins as the world needs, working, say, 8 hours a day. Someone makes an invention by which the same number of men can make twice as many pins as before. But the world does not need twice as many pins. Pins are already so cheap that hardly any more will be bought at a lower price. In a sensible world, everybody concerned in the manufacture of pins would take to working 4 hours instead of 8, and everything else would go on as before. But in the actual world, this would be thought demoralizing. The men still work 8 hours, there are too many pins, some employers go bankrupt, and half the men previously concerned in making pins are thrown out of work. There is, in the end, just as much leisure as on the other plan, but half the men are totally idle, while half are still overworked. In this way, it is ensured that the unavoidable leisure shall cause misery all around instead of being a universal source of happiness. Can anything more insane be imagined?
But the thing is, if you want to keep up with the Joneses, then half the people will produce twice the number of pins. The other half, they'll be unemployed temporarily, but then eventually they'll go to making a better car. And so like, because people keep wanting more and more because they want to keep up with their peers. I feel like that's actually a big part of human nature. You don't want to be way behind your peers. So like, if your peer has a better car, then you're going to want a better car. Then those people that were producing pins, now they're producing better cars. I feel like that's kind of what's happening.
If I may, let me offer a different perspective. I think what Russell is referring to there is a chapter out of Adam Smith's book where he's talking about a factory that actually makes pens.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he gives an update.
Yeah, and what Smith does is, and it's a great deal more than twice as many.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, yes.
Like thousands,
imagine how many times it is now.
Times as many.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's that much, but it's certainly 20 times.
It is. uh, if you considered how long or how much effort it takes a person to make a pen, a complete pen from scratch, the head of it, sharpening the point, mining the wire, cutting the wire, and all of that. Oftentimes we hear that referred to as the division of labor. There's a guy who he just does this one little part of, but the end result is thousands of pens are produced every day. And if I had to make pens all by myself, every step, I might make 100 in a day. It's not, we often hear it referred to as a division of labor, but to me, it's the multiplication of labor. It's improving the productivity with less work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that out. I think that's what Russell is referring to, but I haven't
Right.
read the essay.
Right.
So then the question is why, if that's true, then why couldn't we work so many fewer hours than we used to? My question and my answer is I think people just choose not to, just because they want to have more stuff.
I think it's a little more nuanced than that, because the people who own or run the factory found another market, and so they can sell a few thousand more pens. Why wouldn't they do that? I mean, why would you make a few hundred pens and employ 10 people when you can make a few thousand a day employing the same 10 people and pay everybody more?
So I think the question is, would you guys rather, so if you look at the GDP in 1950, let's say, versus today, how many times bigger is it today than it was in 1950 GDP?
I would have to look it up to give you an exact number, but I know it's
But it's a lot
at least
more.
double.
No.
Yeah.
No, I'll go back.
And GDP, the calculation of that has not changed.
Yeah.
And I think that it should, because I have more knowledge at my fingertips than the president, than all the leaders of the free world had in the 1990s. That is not a factor in the calculation of GDP.
Right. Yeah.
At all.
I think to your answer, Michael, I think the real question is like, why do people want to make more money, right? And from one side, you would think, I mean, at least the good way of thinking about it is that, okay, I want financial stability. So in case I cannot work or I want to provide for my family or whatever, I have financial stability, whether it's, the savings or whether it's a business or whatever, right? So yes, I can work half of the time and make the same amount of money and live the same way, let's say, assuming, but still, that's not really where most people's ambitions are.
They want stability, not just enough, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing for companies. Like, why, as a company, I want to fire people, and because now I can produce the same number of pins, with half of the amount of people. Yeah, I mean, as an owner, CEO, I want to make more money. I want. A lot of times they put it behind the cause, and we're doing this for the good of the people, but really it's a combination of both. A little bit of like, I want to make more money, and just there's not enough money in the world that I can be satisfied with. That's enough. So there's always you need more money. But yeah, everybody wants more money.
Well, I think Michael is I think your point, I understand your point, and I agree with your point. I just see it at a different level. It's not that I think that people should work less because you're making more. It's how much do we need to keep up with the Joneses? What are the right things to pursue? And I guess the perspective that I'm coming from is a lot of people say that work gives them purpose and meaning. And I guess what they mean by that is employment. They get some self-satisfaction of it. But to me, purpose and meaning are not something that you're paid. They're something that you make. And the question for me is, what am I going to make that out of? Am I going to make that out of more money
Mhm.
or better food or something besides rice and beans, which I really like, by the way.
That
Healthy
doesn't apply
too.
to everyone. A lot of people I know personally, and I'm guessing this is not just limited to those people, is that they really work does give them purpose and meaning. For example, if a nurse helps people and they get this satisfaction from saving lives or helping taking care of people, right? So that's work and that's give them meaning. But I do see your point is most of the time, unfortunately, it's just like I
But
need money. So what I gotta do?
that purpose and meaning doesn't come from what they're being paid. It
No.
comes from the self-satisfaction they get from doing that activity.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I think I actually wanted to bring that up to finish the podcast. So I'm really glad you guys steered the conversation in that way. But ultimately the question, and I think this should be the last question. I'm sorry we have to finish early today, but is work essential? Is it an essential? Considering we have two things, we have work and non-work, work and leisure. Is work an essential part of people's lives in order to provide meaning to people's lives? Is it essential for happiness? Is it essential for personal fulfillment? Or you can achieve that with leisure as well? Is work really absolutely essential? What do you guys think about that?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I don't think so. That's why I'm a little skeptical of that answer that people work the same hours because they want meaning. Because I could go to the gym, get a good workout. I could listen to some good music or write some good music. I could read a good book or write a good book. I could do creative activities. There's lots of things I could do that would give me meaning that are not the traditional work that earns income. So that's why I'm a little skeptical that's why we continue to work the same amount. And that's why I kind of am a little bit in favor of the Joneses theory, I guess.
Yeah, I really like this question because it puts me in a challenging position, and I don't know which side I'm on. Basically, like Michael said, no, it's not. You can get meaning and purpose from things other than work. It doesn't have to be work, where you can get meaning in your life from. I could just go and help people and be a good person and whatever, without work. But really, the other side of the coin is imagine everybody did that. Imagine nobody worked. How are you gonna dress up? How are you gonna eat? How are you gonna, where is food coming from? Where is
But forget that. Forget that for a second. Forget that. Let's just talk about the meaning part of it. What do you think about the meaning part of it? Do you need that to have meaning?
Individually, as an individual, my answer is no. I don't need to work to have for my life to have meaning. No.
I would say, because you were asking if work is essential to have meaning, I would say work is not essential, but I think having an income is essential. Maybe not for meaning, but just for survival. And for most people to have an income, then you have to work. And if your work happens to be something that gives meaning for you, then lucky you, right? And if it's not, then you have to balance out how much am I going to work, and will that give me enough time to devote to more meaningful things? And that's just the thing that we have to decide individually. For some people who may tons of money and they certainly don't need to work anymore. They could retire, and obviously they find meaning in what they're doing. If they continue in doing it, even though they don't really need the income from it. But I would go back to, what has society decided about how important, how essential work is? And I could go back to, why is it that the work week, when for hundreds of years it was always thought of as a good thing, that the work week has been getting shorter and shorter? And so why did we get stuck on 40 hours a week? Was that a collective decision? Is that really just natural human nature to want to be happy, to sort of like, it feels natural to be working 40 hours a week? Or is it something that society and whoever makes the decisions for society decided? You know, but in terms of, yeah.
Just an interesting thing, just to bring that up, because it does illustrate your point to some extent. France has actually, for a number of years now, a long time, they've had 35 hours instead of 40, and
Yes.
it doesn't really seem to change anything.
No.
So that's an interesting little experiment.
Yeah. Agree.
Any last comments from David or Carolyn?
No, I'm still just trying to figure it out.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. I mean, I think this was a good discussion, and we did our best to answer some of the relevant questions about work, about the morality of work, about how society deals with the organization of work. And we didn't really touch a lot on idleness, leisure, but we kind of did to some extent.
Right. Let me just, can I just qualify something?
Of course. Yeah.
Well, I don't know what the words meant during his time, but I certainly view idleness as different from leisure. You know, idleness is just really not doing anything, just being a couch potato there the whole, 24 hours a day, while leisure is you're pursuing activities that you the fact that you're pursuing it at your own choice is something that you find fulfillment in.
Well,
And
let
so,
me
yeah.
just, to your point, just to clarify, I don't think he uses it in that way. I think idleness, what he means is basically just leisure.
Okay. Yeah.
But what he does do in the essay, towards the end of the essay, he actually he said, what he says is, basically, because we didn't touch on it at all, maybe at a different occasion, but in a different occasion we'll have the chance. But what he says is basically, well, people have been criticizing this leisure part of society, of our time, for a long time now. I want to say leisure is actually great, and essentially there are two parts of leisure. And one part is just passive leisure. Passive leisure is okay for you to have fun, basically go to the movies, read a book, watch a TV show, whatever it is, you're consuming something, some piece of media, or just like having dinner or whatever. That is absolutely fine, and even you might grow as a person. But there's also active leisure, which is actually a completely different type of leisure, and it's actually just as valuable as work for society,
Right.
which is people going out there doing some volunteering, helping other people, painting, writing, producing movies instead of watching movies, producing books instead of reading books, cooking, inventing things, thinking about science. Newton was a person
lying underneath an apple tree.
Yeah, Newton was a person of leisure. He just spent his time in leisure, but he was actually moving the world forward with science and so on and so forth. Science, culture, knowledge. So let's not dismiss leisure quickly. No. That's basically what he said about it.
Right.
And I thought that was actually probably the most interesting part of the essay for me. But it's a very interesting essay in general. But it's a good thing that you touched on that.
Yep.
Anyways, any final comments, or should we be done?
That's all I have.
All right, so my final comment is that I had a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this with me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody, and thanks for watching, and subscribe to the channel if you reach the end. Thank you.